Hello, everyone. I can see there's quite a few of you here. I can see Jessica is here. Just gonna...
Hi.
Hi, Jessica.
I'm here. Hi.
Have you turned your video on? Are you able to do that?
Let's have a look. It says you've stopped it.
So we've just done to everyone. We've just done a top one, which worked perfectly.
Can't start your video because the host has stopped.
Make you host. Can I make you host? Can you do it?
Yeah, there we go.
Hello. Brilliant, finally. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I know we've got quite a lot of people registered, so I think a lot of people will be either watching the recording, and I can see them joining right now. But we'll get started. I am recording this, so for anyone that wants to watch it again, I'm going to send out the recording because we have a lot of followers in America and Australia and places like that who are probably asleep right now. And as much as they love you, probably don't want to get up at 1 in the morning to listen to you.
No, quite understandable.
So this is Jessica Huie, everyone. She is a very glamorous PR. So you form a PR agent, then you've started your own PR business, and an international entrepreneur, colourblind cards, an MBE. You were invited to Downing Street to talk to the Prime Minister about entrepreneurship. And in short, an incredibly glamorous career, or so it seems from the outside. And I have to say, I've had the fortune of meeting you a few times, and an incredibly lovely and genuine woman as well, which you don't always necessarily think you're going to get in the PR world. And of course, the reason you're here is you're the author of Purpose, your new book.
My first book, yes.
So you put that came out, was it a month ago, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, April 25th it came out. So it's still new. So I'm still very much doing the book rounds and running around, working my little butt off, enjoying it.
Excellent. And I read the book and I absolutely love it. And I really wanted to get you on here. This is we don't normally do webinar interviews. What normally happens is people come on and they've got a slide kind of set and they've got sharing practical expertise. But as much as running businesses and being freelance or having a career is about having practical skills, it's your mindset that's so important. And without the right mindset, you can't not only make a success of it, but you can't be happy, which is really important, I think, as well. So I wanted to ask you some questions based on your book. And we'll, at the end, if anyone has questions for Jessica, please do. If you write them in chat, either now or at the end, and I will put them to Jessica afterwards. So this is your chance. Anything you want to ask Jessica about her book or generally, please do. But I want to start with, so in your book, so you talk about coming from a background, growing up on an estate in London, falling pregnant at 17, and becoming a single mum, and then ending up in a flat in King's Cross and being very depressed, dropped out of school. But there must have been a drive, some kind of drive in you, because you went from that to going back to college, do your A-levels, putting yourself through university, and then talking your way into what probably was the UK's top PR agency at that time. So what I want to ask you is, what was that drive and where did it come from?
I think that, I realized early on that, I needed to make some pretty drastic changes because I was unhappy, very unhappy. And on reflection, I wonder if there was some kind of postnatal depression. If there was, it certainly went undiagnosed. But there was this, I guess there's the normal emotions that kick in and hormones when you have a baby, right? No, nothing can prepare you for that shock, that life adjustment. But, being 18 when my daughter was born and just having like zero, I'd never changed a nappy. So I wasn't a young person who really had experience with babies. It was quite a sort of, oh my God. And then having no resource, having no money, having no prospects, and realizing very quickly that, walking to the post office to get benefits and kind of struggle through hand to mouth. And most importantly, you know, what hit me more so than the practical challenge of not having any money or sleep was how I was received by people, you know, the kind of the shame that kicked in from the moment that I became pregnant, and the sort of judgment really hit me very hard. And that was one of the big motivators in me wanting to change my life, because I felt impacted by and judged. And so that was a real driver for me. But also just taking small steps, you know, it didn't happen overnight. And in the beginning, you know, I always say that actually in the end, what has more of an impact on our ability to change our lives is not the practical steps required or any real obstacle. It's how possible we think it is for us to change our lives. How possible we think it is for us to actually end up in that vision or dream that we have for our life. You know, that has the power to make it happen or to not. And that's often the biggest obstacle that I think we face, as opposed to anything real or tangible that stands between today and tomorrow.
And so when you were growing up, when you were little, what was the dream that you had, or the feeling you had your life was going to be? Did you feel that you were going to have a big life, that you were going to do things you really wanted to do and make a difference? Or did you not? Did you just think life was going to happen to you and you were going to just go where it took you?
Yeah, no, I had dreams. I mean, I was fortunate then that in as much as, you know, my family had challenge, and it was often entirely dysfunctional, you know, completely. We were loved, and we were given access to opportunities as much as my parents could afford. So they both worked really, really hard to give us, to expose us to what was possible. So, you know, I was really into ballet as a kid. So I got to go to the Royal Ballet at one point, and the Royal Opera House. And, you know, we had 2 holidays as kids, which were really life-changing, because there was this, you know, shift and sort of worldliness that kicked in early on. So, yeah, I had dreams, and something happened in the teen years, as I think is often the case, where, you know, if we don't have this strong, stable foundation, we can lose ourselves in external influences. And I think that's what happened. It all went a bit askew in my teen years, and suddenly I found myself not being able to see a life for myself. And, you know, what we see is so critical. And I didn't know anyone that had been to university. You know, my dad wanted me to be the first in the family, but I knew nobody else. I didn't see anybody. I mean, we didn't know professionals. So in the end, it's like we need to be able to see it to know it's possible for ourselves. And I lost that.
You talked about living in that flat in King's Cross and being very, very depressed. The hostel, yeah. And probably being at an extreme low. And it was a social worker or health visitor that actually suggested that you went back to school. And do you think sometimes we have to get to that lowest point before we actually do something that maybe you're so low that the only thing you can do is to do something to take yourself up? Or the fact that having those, almost like an angel being sent to you, but that one person who just comes and lights that fire again.
Yeah, I think, you know, so often other people can see something in us before we see it in ourselves. That creates a sort of a door. They open a door for you. And again, it's all down to we're looking so hard, we're so ensconced and lost in this gloom and doom and you know, immediate reality, that we lose sight of what else is possible for us. And that's really what that wonderful woman did for me that day. I think it helps when we hit off the bottom, you know, because there is nowhere else to go. But I also think we can, you know, even if we aren't on the floor, we can make a deliberate choice if we aren't fulfilled to you know, make living our biggest and best life a priority and actually take proactive steps, so we don't have to hit, you know,
deliberately go.
No, not encouraging teenagers to go and have babies.
End up in hostels in King's Cross.
No, don't do that.
So I've got a question. about imposter syndrome. So it's a big thing, particularly for women, and often women who are incredibly well qualified and incredibly experienced, very talented, they're waiting for someone to catch them out. And so and I remember in your book, you didn't tell anyone at your PR agency that you were a single mom until one day the office secretary phoned up and your daughter answered the phone. Gave it away. But so you went into an environment, coming from the background you came from, you know, as you said, you were the first in your family to go to university. You didn't grow up around professional people. You were a single mum, and you were trying to hide this to present an alternative version of you. How did you not have imposter syndrome? Or if you did, how did you deal with it? Because I think, however you did, there's a lot of people trying to work out how to deal with imposter syndrome. And your scenario is quite extreme, because the extreme between where you are and where you came from are quite large. So how did you experience it, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I spent 18 years feeling like an imposter, you know, even when, and again, in the book, I wrote about having won all these business awards and started, you know, the card company, which, you know, made history in this country and really opened up this conversation about the importance of seeing ourselves reflected in retail and in advertising, and, you know, had done all this stuff, and yet still felt my view of myself was so far removed from the reality. It was still way back in being this 16, 17-year-old expelled kid who'd got pregnant. And so, yeah, I was in Downing Street, you know, at this round table in pieces inside, because I just didn't feel I belonged at that table. And I didn't feel I had anything to truly contribute. And so ended up dimming my own light, almost before anybody else could, which of course they wouldn't, because the way they were perceiving me was entirely different. And I think we do that so often as women, particularly. We kind of play down and we shrink. We do ourselves this huge disservice because our relationship with ourselves is so, you know, off kilter, which is why, you know, we will never supersede our own level of self-esteem. You know, so we can do all the practical stuff and create amazing work. But if our relationship with ourselves isn't healthy and doesn't have strong roots, then at some point it starts to crumble.
Absolutely. I agree with all of that. So how did you, in the end, so do you have imposter syndrome now?
No, I don't.
So what was the change in you that enabled you to come to terms with your possibility and not diminish yourself anymore?
I mean, I definitely have moments where I still feel afraid. You know, my book sits in the self-help section of bookstores, and it's new for me. You know, I've spent my career in media and as an entrepreneur, and so that whole mind, body, spirit, self-help area is a completely new space to operate in. So certainly I felt afraid, you know, at venturing into this new arena. But imposter, no, because the place that I'm coming from is one where it's a vulnerable space, but it's true and it's honest. And the beautiful thing about making yourself vulnerable, and this book is incredibly honest, and you know, there were moments a couple of days after it came out where I, you know, literally wanted to hide under my duvet cover because I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Oversharing on steroids. But the other side of that is this liberation, because, you know, once you just are who you are, nothing can be taken from you. And that is so empowering and liberating. And what happens is the people and situations that aren't for you start to fall away. And you create this space for all those that are aligned with, you know, the real you to step in and kick in. And that's when you start to get into this flow where everything is congruent. But to answer your question, you know, that really came out of this life-changing moment of caring for my dad 2 years ago, you know, which was the first time that I'd got out of this cycle of doing and achieving and being so focused on external factors and feeling like enough, to just being present. And that period in which I started to write just completely changed my life, and this clarity kicked in.
It's one of those sort of defining moments, isn't it, that just kind of come along, and you could have a plan for it that just sort of happened.
No, and I think when those moments present themselves, it's how we respond to them. You know, I'd had one earlier with colourblind, with, you know, looking for a card for my daughter and realising there's nothing in the high street. And it could have been a thought that I just, oh, can't believe no one's doing that. You know, we live in a multicultural society. Why aren't there cards that are representative? And got back to my glamorous PR job. But in that moment, I pursued that thought. And so it took my life in a new direction. And that's what caring for my dad was. It was this just huge wake up, you know, kind of awakening in so many ways. And I had a moment where I thought, actually, you know, after Dad passed on, where I thought, actually, the book I should write is How to Build an Authentic Personal Brand, because that's the book, my career, you know, but I didn't. I canned that and wrote what, you know, what was trying to evolve. And as a result, all of this kind of beautiful, unknown, exciting, scary path has opened up, and that's living. You know,
it was more like a head-heart decision, isn't it? The head decision would have been to have written the brand book, but the heart, which is a good, you know, it was a safer gamble to do the
completely,
but the rewards are bigger. There's one theme that comes out from your book that I absolutely can't agree more with, and know is true, is and you touched on it about your dad, and the tough experiences we go through in life, we all have them, and they are horrible when they are happening and when you're dealing with them, but they strip you away. They also leave you in a place where actually you can be braver, because you can make, if you've lost everything, you don't have to take the safe choice because you've got nothing left to lose. You can do something that's brave. But I believe that those experiences give us strength, resilience, and gratitude, because when they pass, we really do value just a normal life, because we know kind of what hell is. Do you agree with that? And what's been your most important learning experience? And what's, you know, if you look back at the really tough times you have, what's been the most defining one for you?
I do agree. I do definitely agree. And, you know, I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful because, you know, the extremes of my experience mean that I have an ability to feel others' pain, which is a I think that's my dishwasher. Sorry, is a wonderful thing. 2 seconds, I'm going to switch it on. Sorry about that.
Those things never shut up.
They don't, no, exactly. So, you know, I'm able to appreciate everything, and I do every morning. I wake up and I look out into the garden and I look at the squirrels and I look at the flowers, and, you know, it's a very real, heartfelt peace, you know, which is so new. It's not about anything material. It's this peace which I have now, which eluded me for, you know, 20 years, and I searched for it and I thought I could fix myself and find that outside, and actually out of this incredible pain of losing, you know, the person that was just everything to me, emerged this peace. You know, the irony is not lost, and that is so often the case, but we have to be willing to kind of venture into the pain and be with it and not shut off. And it was beautiful to find that within something so painful.
I have to say, if anyone here hasn't read Jessica's book yet, first of all, go and buy it and read it. Secondly, don't read it in public. Because there is a strong possibility, like me, you will end up crying on the train. Particularly the scene with your father in the chair, in the living room. So yeah, so don't read Jessica's book in public. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I think also as a side thing, and actually I was talking about this with someone yesterday, that when you go through a difficult experience, you also have to leave it behind at some point. And sometimes I see people owning a difficult experience and allowing it to define them. So they will say, you know, I am a they might say, I am an alcoholic, or I am I am an abuse survivor. But in experiences that I've had going through very, very difficult times in my life, and I read a very good book called Trauma and Recovery by a woman, I think it's called Judith Herman. I mean, she talks about how you go through an experience where there's the you before, the you living through that awful experience, and the you after, and how you get to that you after. And that you after is a combination of the two. You can never recapture the person you were before a life-changing experience. But equally, you need to leave behind that person who experienced it. And so, like you say, you have to, that's when that contentment, that inner peace, that gratitude that you talk about, you only get that when you allow yourself to say, that experience happens to me, but I'm going to move on from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that. I think for many years, my narrative about my life was completely defined by, having been a teenage mum, and it became almost like a script, which other people buy into because, the media love a story. We all love a story. But I got lost in it at some point, and it became self-fulfilling. The stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and our experiences and our lives have a way of playing out over and over again, long after those circumstances have evolved. And that's why it's so important to check in with what we're saying about who we are to ourselves, because what we say will show up. If we tell ourselves that we've been through this, our life is always a struggle, then inevitably it is always a struggle. So, it's that constant checking in with the health of our thoughts and our sort of, level of consciousness, and making it a priority to step out of doing in order to have that check-in process, which again was new to me until I stopped to be with Dad.
Yeah, because you talking about almost like being on a treadmill in your life, wasn't it? And it's a treadmill of success. And it was, and I guess if you don't find personal fulfillment, an external fulfillment will never satisfy you. An award, a commendation, financial success will never fill that hole. But for you, it was stepping off that and taking time out with your dad that reconnected you with yourself in a way.
Yeah, completely. And, again, it's never ending. If so many of us are so defined by the title on our business card or these awards that we lose who we are within that. And so we never get to this place of feeling like enough. And so we're constantly looking for the next goal and the next thing to do. And we don't know who we are without that, which is dangerous because all of that can be taken away. None of that. It means that we're kind of thrown about from left to right, depending on how well that meeting goes or whether that client comes on board. Our happiness and our peace and serenity is completely defined by external factors.
That's out of our control to a greater extent.
Yeah.
And so we'd just say, if anyone who watches this now or watches it later is going through a tough time, just again, read Jessica's book and you will understand the process that you go through, and you will come through it. There will be a day when this is in your past, and unbelievably you will be thankful, and you will not maybe see it now, but you will be thankful for the experience you went through, because it will give you gifts that you cannot envisage when you're in it. But the wisdom and the strength that you have and the inner peace you have, I can see from reading your book, comes from your life experiences and the journey you went on. You would not have that contentment had you not had those experiences.
Absolutely. And it's amazing, everything you just said, everything, it's like I look back and you see how the dots connect and you understand the value. It's so hard when you're in the middle of it, but afterwards you can look back and you can understand the value in the pain and how it can be leveraged today for your purpose. So it's all playing out as it's meant. And you just got to sit with it sometimes, which is where the courage starts to come and we grow.
Absolutely. So I've got one more question for Jessica, and if I see Laura says hello from South Africa, and Sally's asked a question. I'll get to that in a second. Hi, Sally. I've got one more question for you. So your book is called Purpose, and in it you talk about some stories of other people and how they found their purpose. If someone's watching this now and they don't feel that they have found their purpose yet, and they feel lost, and they're not even sure how to find it. I know this is a really difficult question, but how do we find purpose, and how do we know when we've found it? What does it feel like?
It feels like, it feels meant. It feels like where you are supposed to be. And it's the place where that sort of compartmentalization that is often becomes a norm, you know, because we're so used to shape shifting and being one person in one environment and someone else personally. You know, it's where everything starts to feel true and right. You know, our purpose is our reason for being. And I truly believe that every single one of us has that, you know, that purpose for our life. And when we don't know what it is, often the first step is just getting really honest about where we are, and the fact that perhaps you're not feeling fulfilled and you're not living the life that you really think you should be. And making a decision to prioritize going on that journey to explore what it is, as opposed to just living in this reactive way, which is so normal for so many. So, you know, I call it positively disrupting your life, you know, making a decision to just do things differently, you know, go to new environments, have new conversations, just follow anything that kind of lights you up and explore it, and without worrying about where it's going to lead. You know, let go of the need to control outcomes and just see what evolves, and follow what's lighting you up.
Be scared.
Yeah, the unknown. Just step into the unknown, because we already know if we stay with what we know, we're just going to get more of what we already know. So the only way to shift is
that a definition of insanity? Doing what you've always done, but expecting to get something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Sally's got a question. I'm going to ask Jessica. If anyone else would like to ask Jessica anything at all, please do ask it in chat, and then we'll put it to her. So Sally says, in your book, you mentioned meditation. How often do you meditate?
I'm averaging, I would say, 6 out of 7 days currently. I try and do it every single day. I really do. But it's not always sitting down and closing my eyes. It's, you know, it could be yoga. It could be just sort of sitting in the garden in silence. It's anything that takes me out of doing. But certainly that practice of, you know, literally closing my eyes and honing in on my breath is so renewing, and is definitely, unquestionably, you know, one of the tools that has helped me shift into, you know, the space that I find myself in now. And, you know, I found it really difficult when I started, and I began by listening to guided meditations, which were, you know, helped me to just control this crazy dog mind of mine. And you know, it's a muscle, isn't it? So the more that you exercise it, the easier it becomes. So just the deal is just keep showing up and just keep being there. It doesn't matter if you're thinking a million thoughts, just do it again the next day.
And that's like feelings as well. People think feelings are this uncontrollable thing that happens to them, but feelings are habits. Just like if you smoke every day, you will want to smoke every day. If you consciously break it, within about a year, you don't think about smoking, or less than a year. But our feelings as well. So we think maybe we have feelings of negativity, or we have feelings of overwhelm, but we can choose to feel a different way. And in the beginning, like we say, like meditation, it might feel a bit strange. You might have to force yourself to do it. But if you consciously try a different feeling, eventually that will become habit, and the old habit will die away. Jessica, so you've written one book. Have you thought about writing any more?
Absolutely. I'm never going to stop. I mean, writing, it was like coming back to a piece of myself that I'd left behind in childhood, because as a kid, I loved to write, and I was very good. I was always writing, you know, magical stories, and yeah, I was a writer. And I think so often we just, you know, we find ourselves in the life that we're living, and we forget who we are. You know, we completely lose connection with those things that were innate and the gifts that we came to this world with. So for me, it was like, it certainly felt like coming back to where I belonged, where I, you know, it was it was more than just an expression. The very act of writing for me was like cheese and grapes. So I will keep writing, forever.
Oh, excellent. Sally said thank you. So if anyone else has got any questions, they can ask them now. So your book, it's available from Amazon.
Yes.
I'll put a link in. When I send the recording out to everyone, I will put a link in the email. But is there anything else you would like, any wisdom you'd like to impart, or anything you'd like to tell people?
I guess it's, absolutely read the book. But it's an invitation to, I spent so long and did so much which society viewed as success. And I'm grateful for it. And it opened up the world to me in a way which went way beyond my own and others' expectations. But unquestionably, the best adventure is the one that I find myself on now. The one which is not, isn't strategized, is just as ambitious and just as kind of visionary, but is coming from this place which is so true and just me, and I would just invite everybody to prioritize, love themselves enough to give yourself the life that is really you, become more of you. It is scary and things will, you will be stripped back by the process, but the rewards are immense.
I always think that the word selfless, because so many mothers are selfless and feel they need to put their children first, or their partner first, their career first. And if you think what it means, selfless, there's less of yourself. And then actually, whereas we need to give to others, we actually need to look after ourselves first.
Oh, completely.
Cara's got a brilliant question. She says, can you explain what's on your wall behind you? It's very visual. So I was wondering if it means something to you.
It's this. So I'm in the kitchen, and it's a culmination of photos of the family on our holidays and my 6-year-old's art. So yeah, it is meaningful. This is like his collage of, expression.
It's brilliant. I love it. It's really. Marie's got a question. It's not about your wall. I love that question. Marie says, I haven't read the book yet, but I will do. Who were Jessica's self-help influences?
Maya Angelou. And there is this, I actually mentioned it in the book, there's this moment in the book where she's a young mum actually, and she had decided she was leaving home, and she's got it good. She's living with her mum in this big house, and she tells mum she's leaving to go off into the world, and her mum says, baby, I think you might just be the greatest woman that I've ever known, up there with the greats. And she lists 3 kind of legendary, iconic women. And Maya sits in the car and she thinks, gosh, what if my mum is right? What if I am truly one of the greatest women that ever lived? And it plants a seed which she then slowly goes on to step into. And that really impacted me, because so often we put other people on pedestals because of the value that they have in this world, but they're no different to us. And it's simply that choice of deciding to embody some of the values that those individuals live out, and incorporate them into who we are and our purpose and our way of being. So her, Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, beautiful, beautiful human beings who live it. Oprah. Yeah, Oprah. Absolutely, of course, Oprah. Goes without saying.
Anya's got a good question. How do you control emotions and steer them in a positive direction when you have one of those days, assuming you have any?
Oh, I do. Believe me, I do. Yeah. Practice, the more, again, why tools like meditation and yoga are so useful is because it's us taking responsibility for our state of being. And little habits that I've incorporated, like not waking up and grabbing the phone instantly and being bombarded by emails and news, and just getting very deliberate about what I consume, what I take in, less news and more select choice around what I listen to, the conversations I have, all of it. I'm intentional with it. And that helps because it means I'm in this far less reactive state. You know, and I have the time of the month like anyone else. And, you know, those moments where I'm triggered, but also just knowing that, you know, those relationships and circumstances in life, which are really tough, that do trigger us, that's where the growth is. That's where we need to start to utilize, you know, these new habits and tools and work through them. And we just keep growing. But it's a process.
I agree with all of that. And I would also say, be kind to yourself, because as Jessica said, we all have those days, we all have those moments. And if you beat yourself up about it and think that, oh, you know, I've seen Jessica talk and she's so positive and happy, that she wakes up every morning and birds sing and there's something wrong with me that I don't, you're being too harsh on yourself. So we all have those days, and sometimes just allow it to happen and just think. Also, sometimes you get really bad news and it's a normal human response to have a negative feeling.
Yes.
So just, I mean, if you're having every day like that, I would look at maybe kind of changing things. But if it's occasional, just accept that you're human and be kind.
And I read a beautiful quote that was Marianne Williamson, and she talked about this kind of personal journey or personal growth being like childbirth. So we kind of dilate and we contract. We dilate, you know, it's not this linear upward ascent to enlightenment. It's not, it's up and down. And we're working through and shifting habits that we've had for our entire adult life and stuff that's been inherited and around for, you know, passed down generation to generation. So we're shifting a lot when we make the decision to grow and evolve.
And it is a decision, isn't it? It is a choice that you make. And sometimes it's doing stuff that feels hard.
Yes.
Because the easy stuff just keeps you in your comfort zone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it becomes uncomfortable because you get to a point where you're like, is this all there is? So it's not really, it's comfortable in the moment, but long term, you know, it requires a massive sacrifice to not explore our truth and everything else our potential.
Absolutely. So if no one has any more questions, I will let Jessica go. Thank you so much for this, Jessica. It's been always lovely to talk to you. I could always talk to you for hours.
You too. It's been lovely. Thank you for having me.
And at this time, so we attempted to do a Facebook Live originally. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was character building.
It just went horribly wrong. So I'm really pleased. No internet dropped out. We managed to both be on the screen at the same time. So Cara says thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And April does as well.
Thank you, April.
And Anya.
Anya.
And Marie. And Sally. And everyone. So thank you very much, and I will let you go, and I will send this recording out once it's finished processing, and I recommend, if anyone has not read your book, I can't recommend highly enough to read it. It's such a lovely book.
Thank you.
A perfect gift for your girlfriend
as well. If you read it, do please review it. It's my first book, so I'd be so grateful. Thank you.
And Lisa says thank you too.
Thank you, Lisa.
And Claire. Thank you all for everyone for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. So thank you. I'm going to end the meeting now. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.